What does Tommy Robinson, in prison for contempt of court and recently challenging in court his conditions of imprisonment, want? It seems like the answer should be obvious, but it's actually not. Also, it's worth saying right up front that Tommy's support base have made constant allegations of malicious intent on the part of the prison authorities. These are directly contradicted by Tommy himself. The judge released her conclusions the other day, and this is a plan of the whole thing which I won't read out in full. You've got an introduction, and it's basically describing his treatment in prison to date, followed by his 4 grounds of complaint. They were 5, but he abandoned the last one. Okay, what does he want? It was this on the face of it. He seeks permission to apply for judicial review of what he describes in his claim form as his ongoing detention in solitary confinement and treatment. So he wants a review. I want a review into my conditions of ongoing detention by the spaghetti monster. I want to challenge those conditions because I am not happy with them, with a view to changing those conditions, so I first have to have a review. But what does he want? Why does he want a review? What does he want to change? Does he want to change anything? And I will, here, before getting into the meat of it, highlight what I see as a couple of ironies. Following on from ongoing detention in solitary confinement and treatment, he contends that this is incompatible with his rights under Articles 3, 8 and 14 of the European Convention on Human Rights. 3 of his grounds rely on the European Convention on Human Rights: degrading treatment, right to a family life and discrimination. One of the leading bêtes noires of the conservative right is the European Convention on Human Rights, generally, and Article 8 in particular, because it is used by every conceivable immigrant lowlife to justify him staying in the UK. Get a local girl pregnant, have children, then, well, I've got a right to a family life. We want out of the ECHR, and quite correctly so, because it's constantly abused by those people, but not as long as Tommy Robinson can rely on it. Now we seem to want to be in it. Which one is it? You can't have both. It seems that our dislike of the European Convention on Human Rights is extremely selective. When Tommy Robinson complains about his right to respect for his private life within the meaning of Article 8 ECHR, all of a sudden we love the ECHR. What a bunch of hypocrites we are. And is it not also ironic that that conservative right-wing cornerstone of personal responsibility and accountability is somehow magically switched off the moment Tommy enters the room? So you lose a court case. The findings of that are all publicly, transparently available for everyone to view. Nothing is secret. You're then told that since your claims did not hold water, and since they were also damaging, then repeating those claims will be contempt of court and you will likely go to prison. And then you repeat the claims and you go to prison. And then you whinge and whine about the conditions. Does it occur to anybody to say at this point, okay, in terms of your conditions of detainment, whatever, we can think about those. Let's park that objection for the time being. But since you walked yourself into this with your eyes wide open, in the full knowledge of what you were doing and the consequences of what you were doing, do you not have a little bit of responsibility in this? Even if you were being badly treated, do you not have some responsibility in this? Why is personal responsibility, that right-wing cornerstone, suddenly turned off when Tommy Robinson enters the room? Because if you switch it on, you will just have to walk away. And you don't want to walk away. So getting into the specifics then, we get paragraph 10, which is this quotation from the sentencing judge previously. He says that there is an unavoidable clash between the need to keep him safe and the desire to not subject him to conditions which may be more onerous than necessary. Keeping him safely away from other people might then impact his mental health because it involves confining him to some degree, and that is recognized there. This is rational. If you think it is irrational or sign of some desire to torture and torment our friend, then that's on you. No sane person would regard this statement as anything other than rational. And also, Tommy acknowledges this. At paragraph 43, first, as Mr. Williamson, Tommy's barrister, accepts, there is nothing to suggest that the decision to segregate Tommy was taken for the purpose of breaking his resistance or humiliating or debasing him. On the contrary, all the evidence shows that it was taken for his own protection and in the interests of preserving the safety of other prisoners and staff. Have you been led to believe from Ezra Levant or any one of many others that he is somehow being maliciously treated? Here's one such from Ezra. Like I say, prison governor Nicola Marfleet is a sadist. You've just heard from the horse's mouth itself, that is Tommy's representative speaking on his behalf, that she isn't. Do you see how they lie to you? And because Tommy being tortured prizes open the wallets of the donation fodder much more than, well, you know, he's being treated pretty much okay. Look at them back to back. That is Ezra Levant lying like so many others, confirmed by Tommy himself. Ezra says she's a sadist. Tommy comes back through his representative. Nothing is being done for sadistic purposes. Do you see how they lie to you? We can take a look at his early conditions of containment. 16. His segregation was first reviewed in accordance with Rule 45 on 4th of November 2024. It was noted that he was spending time in his cell writing emails and using the phone. He had a TV in his cell. He was going to order a stereo. He could go to the gym and had visits. Healthcare staff had said that he was fit for segregated conditions. At this point, are you getting a sense of degrading, torturous treatment? And in the next paragraph we get the clearest indication from Tommy that he wanted to be confined. 17. On 13th of November 2024, a prison official went to speak to Tommy. He was asked whether he wished to be relocated to the main part of the prison. He noted that about 35% of the prisoners in HMP Woodhill are Muslim, but he said that it was a decision for the governor. He asked if he wished to relocate to a vulnerable prisoners unit in another prison. He declined, saying that he won't live with sex offenders. The governor, Miss Marfleet, spoke to Tommy in person, and he confirmed this view to her. Do you want to be with other prisoners? Well, 35% of those other prisoners are Muslims. Muslims hate me, and there are going to be a fair few killer Muslims in that lot. But it's up to you. That means no. And his concerns were reasonable. 25. Miss Marfleet explains that the fears about threats to Tommy were not mere speculation. There was specific intelligence to the effect that 2 other prisoners were plotting to assault him to gain kudos and notoriety, and a life sentence prisoner was planning to kill him. And he also refused the alternative company of sex offenders in another prison who apparently are segregated within a group and would represent limited company for him. So there are no other options. And if we jump forward to the grounds bit, 51. Given the decision to impose a custodial sanction and the risks involved in detaining a person with Tommy's profile, there is no obvious or feasible way of detaining him which would give a lesser interference. So what do we know at this point? We know that Tommy recognises that his containment regime is not malicious and not sadistic, because he acknowledges this himself through his counsel. We also know that he wants to be segregated because he was offered the option and he declined it, obviously so because he doesn't want to be killed by Muslims. Now let's take a better look at his conditions of containment. They're listed here at length, and in the interests of brevity I have summarised them. 3 hours per day outside cell for things including exercise, gym, shower and laundry. 2 hours 4 times per week, so 8 hours per week of social non-family visits, of which he's had 80. Regular family visits. Cell includes personal possessions and many media devices. 4 hours per day of phone calls to family and friends. He's made 1,250. Daily visits with the prison chaplain plus 1 Bible study a week. I doubt I've made 1,250 phone calls in my entire life. Is this man being tortured? The obvious response to that comes into the discussion of ground 2. 52. Insofar as the complaint is based on any lack of contact with family and friends, it is manifestly not well founded. 2 hours of visits 4 times per week is substantially more than other prisoners are entitled to. Tommy is also able to speak to family and friends on the telephone for up to 4 hours per day. This conveniently leads into the question of curtailment of friend visits and phone calls. Now, I always suspected that what we're going to see here was the case, because what I saw going on was patently ludicrous. The cancellation of visits and curtailment of calls with associates believed to run social media campaigns is a proper response to the need to avoid the use of his incarceration for campaigning purposes, or for broadcasting purposes. So, for example, early on, one of his pals had a phone call with him, and he then went on to upload it to Twitter for the purposes of making money from it. Another made the claim on his behalf that the Southport Rwandan frog-spawn Axel Rudakabana was attending the local mosque. I'm not going to get into any discussion of that here, but Tommy got to broadcast that claim to a very wide audience. Then quite recently, Katie Hopkins asked permission to go to see him, and she said, "I will absolutely sign any NDA you want me to sign, Mrs. Governor." She got refused, and she immediately uploaded the response to her Twitter account. Do you see how this is perfectly reasonable? You can't broadcast from a prison cell, and since your friends can't be trusted, you're not going to get to see them. Again, no sane person would think this is anything other than reasonable. And again, why is there no sense of personal responsibility here on the part of anyone? We allow him to broadcast from his cell, his social media grifter friends, so this is down to us. Zero sense of responsibility. So if we go back to my summary here, the first two grounds were about inhuman, degrading treatment and respect for family life under the European Convention on Human Rights. They were rejected on the basis of the evidence that I've laid out about his very decent conditions, the clear need to keep him safe, his desire to be segregated, and the lack of any malice on the part of the prison, which he acknowledges. Hello, Ezra the liar, as Tommy acknowledges. No sadistic intent, as Tommy himself acknowledges. The reason Ezra and co lie to you is because they think you are too dim to do anything other than dumbly nod along to whatever they say. How does that make you feel? The third ground was about discrimination, again under the ECHR, which apparently we now love because of his political beliefs. This one the judge briefly tests with a little thought experiment. Would anyone else, in the same circumstances, be treated any differently? And the answer is no. And the last one is about a belief that the stated promise to continually review his conditions was false. That was based on a letter from the governor which says, in part, whilst his continued segregation will remain under review with continuing ongoing consideration as to potential alternatives, none is currently envisaged to meet the needs of suitability managing the aforementioned risks. The judge's response in rejecting that is perfectly fair. He is under constant review. But I don't even care about that. I'll give my own. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want to change. His conditions are good. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. It's feasible to go. He wants to go out, but within the possibilities, he doesn't want to go anywhere else. And he accepts that there is zero malice in his containment. Ezra, you absolute stratospheric liar. So at the end here I return to the question, what does he want? He clearly wants something, and it's not a review, because there will be a review to no end, a review with no purpose. What does he want? He wants to remain visible, because the more visible he is while he's inside, the less catching up with his visibility there will be to do when he gets out. And the quicker the donation machine will switch back into full swing. It's pretty much as simple as that.